Okay, I know this is going to make me sound like the bad guy, but just hear me out. Is it really fair for someone to just completely erase you from their life over one stupid, drunken joke? I'm not talking about a breakup text, I'm talking about a full-scale digital execution. Blocked, deleted, vanished from existence. Because that's what Marcus did, and I'm still reeling from the sheer, silent brutality of it. We were together for 3 years, 3 solid, comfortable years. Marcus was my rock, everyone said so. He was the kind of guy who remembers your coffee order down to the half pump of vanilla, never forgets your mom's birthday, and would be genuinely thrilled to spend a Friday night assembling a 2,000-piece puzzle of a goddamn lighthouse. His love was a quiet, comfortable blanket, and for a long time, that was all I wanted. But lately, that blanket had started to feel suffocating, like it was smothering a part of me that desperately wanted to be seen. This feeling exploded after I met Zoe and her friends. You have to understand them. They're not just women, they're an event. They walk into a room and the whole energy shifts. They have these high-powered jobs in finance and marketing, wardrobes that look like a magazine spread, and a kind of biting, sarcastic wit that they wield like a weapon. Their friendships are built on a foundation of brutal, affectionate roasting. Listening to them was like watching a high-speed tennis match, and I was the ball girl just standing on the sidelines. I was always just there, Harper, Marcus's sweet, simple girlfriend. They were champagne, and I felt like tap water. I craved their validation like a drug, desperate to prove I wasn't just some boring accessory to a boringly nice guy. I wasn't just trying to make friends, I was auditioning. And I convinced myself that my relationship with the steady, predictable Marcus was the one thing holding me back from landing the part. The pressure to fit in with them was immense, and it created this ugly little voice in my head. Their love language was a specific brand of high-stakes sarcasm. It wasn't just teasing. It was performance art. You had to be able to take a hit and, more importantly, give one back that was even sharper. Zoe was the master. I remember one night at a gallery opening, her husband, David, was holding court, passionately explaining some obscure financial concept. Zoe breezed by, patted his arm, and said to the group, "Don't let him fool you with the big words." At home, his most profound thought is deciding which of his identical gray sweaters to wear. The group roared with laughter. David just smiled a little tightly and Zoe was queen. I watched that interaction and filed it away as evidence. See, this is how it works. This is what a modern, confident power couple looks like. You show you're so secure in your relationship that you can publicly mock it. It's a sign of strength, a signal to the world that you're untouchable. I started to see Marcus's quiet, unwavering support not as a virtue, but as a liability. It was boring, it gave me no material. How could I make a clever, cutting joke about a man whose only flaw was being too nice? The crazy thing is, he warned me. We had this conversation months ago, after watching a movie where a character humiliated her partner at a dinner party. I was laughing, but Marcus turned to me, his face completely serious. "I could never be with someone who did that," he said, his voice low and firm. "Public respect is everything. We're supposed to be a team. You don't sell out your teammate to get a cheap laugh from an audience that doesn't give a damn about you. It's the ultimate betrayal." He told me how his father used to make little jokes at his mother's expense in front of friends and how he watched it slowly crush her spirit. He swore he would never be in a relationship like that. I remember nodding, patting his hand, and saying, "Of course, honey." But in my head, I was thinking he was being overly dramatic. It was just a movie. He was so black and white about things, so principled it was almost a flaw. I filed his heartfelt confession away under Marcus being sensitive, and stupidly, tragically, I forgot all about it. The party was at Zoe's penthouse, a place so minimalist and sleek it made our apartment look like a cluttered storage unit. The wine was flowing, a smooth, expensive red that made me feel bolder than I was. I was doing it, I was actually keeping up. I'd made a couple of jokes that landed, and Zoe had laughed, a real laugh, and squeezed my arm. For a few glorious minutes, I felt like I was in. Later in the evening, the core group, Zoe, a woman named Amelia who was a lawyer, and a few others huddled on the balcony overlooking the city lights. The conversation, as it always did, turned to their partners. It was a competitive sport. Amelia went first, describing how her husband, a surgeon, was so squeamish about household germs that he'd once tried to sterilize a cutting board with rubbing alcohol. Everyone shrieked with laughter. Then Zoe topped it, telling a story about David getting so engrossed in a spreadsheet that he'd worn his shirt inside out to a board meeting. More laughter. It was sharp, it was a little mean, but it was coated in this veneer of affection that made it acceptable. It was the price of admission. Then the spotlight swung to me. Zoe turned, her eyes glittering. Come on, Harper, you've been so quiet. Marcus seems absolutely perfect. There has to be something. What's his secret embarrassing flaw? My heart hammered against my ribs. My mind went completely blank. All the clever, witty things I'd rehearsed in my head evaporated. I could feel them all watching me, waiting. I glanced across the living room and saw Marcus talking to David, smiling his easy, gentle smile. He looked so handsome, so solid, so boring. The toxic voice in my head screamed, "Don't be boring, say something." I saw Zoe's expectant smirk, a silent challenge. This was my moment. The wine and the desperation took over. A horrible, ugly sentence formed on my lips and tumbled out before I could stop it. "Oh, Marcus," I said, trying to mimic Zoe's casual, dismissive tone. I took a sip of wine for dramatic effect. "He's amazing, really, the total package." I leaned in conspiratorially. "It's just in the bedroom. Let's just say he's like a very expensive, very noble Persian rug. Beautiful to look at, but it doesn't really, move." I held my breath, waiting for the explosion of laughter that would finally, officially welcome me into their circle. It never came. Instead, a profound, suffocating silence fell over the group. The sounds of the party from inside seemed to fade into a distant hum. Nobody was laughing. Nobody was even smiling. I looked at Zoe, my own stupid grin frozen on my face, but her expression was a mask of horrified pity. Her eyes and Amelia's and everyone else's weren't even looking at me anymore. They were looking just over my shoulder. My blood ran cold. Slowly, I turned, and there he was, Marcus. Standing about 5 feet behind me, holding two fresh glasses of wine, one of them clearly for me. He had obviously been walking over to join us. And he had heard every single devastating word. The look on his face will haunt me for the rest of my life. It wasn't anger, it wasn't even hurt, not at first. It was a pure, unfiltered shock, as if I had physically slapped him across the face. His skin seemed to lose all its color, and his eyes, which were usually so warm and full of life, became completely vacant. He looked at me, but it was like he was looking straight through me, seeing a stranger. The easy smile he'd been wearing just moments before was gone, replaced by a gaping void of humiliation. Time seemed to slow down. The silence on the balcony stretched into an eternity. I could feel the unbearable weight of everyone's pity. Zoe's circle wasn't looking at me with admiration. They were looking at me like I was a monster. I had misread the entire game. Their jokes were sharp, but they had boundaries, invisible lines I had just stomped all over with muddy boots. They were poking fun at endearing quirks. I had attacked his masculinity, his dignity. Someone, I think it was Amelia, made a choked little sound, a failed attempt to clear her throat or maybe say something, anything to break the spell. It didn't work. Marcus just stood there frozen, the two wine glasses in his hand looking absurdly out of place. He didn't say a word to me, he didn't have to. The shame radiating off him was a physical force, pressing down on all of us. Finally, he blinked as if waking up from a nightmare. He turned, walked to the nearest small table and placed both glasses down with a quiet, deliberate click. He still didn't look at me. He turned back to the group, his face a completely unreadable mask, and said in a voice that was eerily calm, "Excuse me. I need some air." And then he was gone. He walked straight through the living room, past the clusters of laughing guests, and out the front door without a backward glance. I stood there paralyzed, my stupid, cruel words hanging in the air like toxic smoke. I tried to force a laugh, a pathetic little sound. "He's just so sensitive sometimes," I stammered to Zoe. She didn't laugh back, she just looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. It was a mixture of disgust and, I think, a deep, profound disappointment. The party carried on around me, but my night was over. I had become the punchline. I stumbled home a couple of hours later, the alcohol in my system having curdled into a thick sludge of dread and self-loathing. I kept replaying the scene in my head, the silence, the look in his eyes, the pity on Zoe's face. A small, delusional part of me kept whispering that I was overreacting. He'd be there sitting on the couch waiting for me. He'd be angry, sure, but we would fight. I would cry and apologize, and he would eventually forgive me because that's what Marcus did. He was the rock. Rocks don't just disappear. When I opened the door, the apartment was dark and silent. "Marcus," I called out, my voice sounding small and pathetic in the stillness. No answer. I told myself he was just staying at his friend Robert's place to cool off. It made sense. He needed space. I sent him a text. "I am so sorry." What I said was unforgivable and stupid. "Please just talk to me." Delivered, no reply. I called him. It rang and then went to voicemail. His voice, cheerful and steady, filled my ear. "Hey, you've reached Marcus, leave a message." The normalcy of it was a punch to the gut. I left a rambling, tearful message begging him to call me back. I slept fitfully, waking up every hour to check my phone. Nothing. The next morning, a cold, hard knot of terror was lodged in my stomach. I walked into the bedroom, and that's when I saw it. The closet door was slightly ajar. His side, usually packed with his neatly folded shirts and hanging suits, was half empty. His running shoes were gone from their spot by the door. I ran to the bathroom. His toothbrush was gone. His deodorant, his cologne, the specific face wash he used that I always teased him about all vanished. It was a selective, precise removal. He hadn't just packed a bag for the night, he had excised himself. Panic set in. I tried calling again. This time it went straight to voicemail. My heart dropped. I opened WhatsApp to send another desperate plea. His profile picture was gone, replaced by the gray default silhouette. The last seen status was gone. My message had only one gray tick. He had blocked me. I scrambled to Instagram. I couldn't find his profile. I searched for him from my work account. There he was. He had blocked me there too. Facebook the same. It was a systematic digital amputation. He wasn't giving me the chance to fight or apologize or even explain. He was just gone. I looked around our apartment at the little world we had built, the coffee table he had painstakingly assembled, the bookshelf filled with our mingled books. The stupid lighthouse puzzle, half finished on a side table, all these things were still here, but the life had been sucked out of them. He hadn't taken everything, he'd only taken himself. And in doing so, he had taken everything that mattered. There was no breakup note on the pillows, no angry email, just a deafening, terrifying silence and the gaping holes in our home where his things used to be. It was the coldest, most clinical form of goodbye I could ever have imagined. He hadn't just left me, he had unexisted me. In the days that followed, my panic morphed into a frantic, desperate campaign to get through to him. I was convinced this was just an extreme version of the silent treatment, a punishment that I had to endure before things could go back to normal. They couldn't just be over, not like this. My first call was to Robert, his best friend. The phone rang for a long time before he finally picked up. "Robert, thank God," I blurted out, relief washing over me. "Is he with you? Can you please just tell him I'm falling apart here?" There was a long pause on the other end. "Harper," Robert said, and his voice was cold, stripped of all its usual friendliness. "He's not here, and listen, he asked me not to get in the middle of this." "But I need to talk to him," I cried, my voice cracking. "I know I messed up, I know it was horrible, but I need to tell him I'm sorry." "He knows you're sorry," Robert said flatly. "He doesn't care. He asked me to tell you if you called to please respect his decision and leave him alone." And then he hung up. Defeated, I turned to the only other support system I thought I had. Zoe, I called her, expecting some form of solidarity, some of that sharp-witted advice. What I got was a polite, icy wall. "Harper, hi," she said, her voice distant. "Zoe, I don't know what to do," I sobbed into the phone. "He's gone, he's blocked me everywhere. You were there, you saw it. It was a stupid joke, it was the wine, it wasn't me." "But it was you, Harper," she said, and there was no warmth in her tone, only a cool judgment. "That wasn't just a joke, it was cruel. Honestly, it made everyone incredibly uncomfortable. We all felt terrible for him." The words hit me harder than Robert's rejection, but... "You guys do it all the time," I stammered, confused. "You joke about David." "I joke about David wearing his shirt inside out," she cut me off. "I don't attack his character or humiliate him in a way that cuts to the core of who he is as a man. There's a difference. And frankly, we're all a little weirded out. I think it's best if we give each other some space right now." That was it. The invitations to brunch stopped. The group chat went silent, or more likely, I was quietly removed. The people whose approval I had so desperately craved, the women I had tried to perform for, wanted nothing to do with me. I had made my sacrifice at their altar, and not only did they reject the offering, they kicked me out of the temple. I was completely, utterly alone. I had played a stupid game to win a prize I didn't even really understand, and in the process, I had lost everything that was ever truly mine. Weeks have bled into a month now. The apartment feels like a museum of a life I used to have. His absence is a physical presence. It's in the empty side of the bed that stays cold all night, the silence where his morning podcasts used to be, the extra coffee mug sitting unused in the cabinet. The world has gone quiet. My world, anyway. His, it seems, has not. My only window into his existence is through a digital peephole. I created a fake Instagram account, a pathetic burner profile with a picture of a sunset and 0 followers. It's my nightly ritual of self-torture. I type his name into the search bar, my thumb hovering, my heart pounding with a sick mix of hope and dread. I scroll through the accounts of his friends, Robert, his sister, his old college buddies, and that's how I see him, in pieces. A flash of his arm in the background of a group photo at a barbecue. The back of his head at a baseball game. Each glimpse is a fresh stab of pain. Then last night I found it. Robert posted a series of photos from a camping trip. The first few were just landscapes, trees, a lake, a tent. My finger swiped and there he was, Marcus, sitting by a crackling campfire, wrapped in a flannel shirt, a beer in his hand. He was looking at someone outside the frame and laughing. It wasn't a polite smile. It was a huge, uninhibited, joyful laugh, the kind I hadn't seen on his face in months. He looked free. He looked happy. He looked like he hadn't just had his heart ripped out and stomped on. He looked like he had finally taken off a heavy backpack he'd been carrying for a very long time. And I sit here in the dark an hour, no, my silent apartment, the blue light of my phone illuminating my face. The stage is empty, the audience is gone, and the clown is left all alone. I refresh the page again and again and again as if a different picture will appear, but it never does. It's just him, smiling under a canopy of stars a million miles away. And me, the ghost, haunting a life I single-handedly destroyed, forever trapped on the outside looking in.